Just because a fight starts here doesn't mean that it can't move over here. You don't have to stay where you started. A good example of this, and it's kind of a funny one, is years ago, I was sparring jiu-jitsu with a friend of mine. Now, I was a lot bigger than my friend. He was about 150 and I was about 210 at the time. He really liked rubber guard and climbing, and triangle was his favorite submission. So we're sparring and we go on the ground, I go on his guard, and I basically let him get the triangle. I've got a plan. I've got a cunning plan that cannot fail. So he climbs his legs, gets into the triangle, and I'm making the adjustments to ensure that they can't get it too tight. I don't want to get choked out doing this. And around the edge of the training room are all these punching bags. So I pick him up and I hold him above my head like I'm about to slam him in the UFC. And I run along the edge of the training room, basically ricocheting him off of each one of the punching bags. He's like, screw you, ouch, that's a shitty thing to do. Each time we hit the bag, there's about 10 of them. Then, to make things worse, there's stairs going down to the changing rooms. So I go over to the stairs, I go to the top of the stairs, I basically hold him over the edge of the stairs, and I dare him to choke me unconscious. He's in a bind now. Because, of course, if he does this, I'm going to fall, I'm going to land on top of him, he's going to go boom, boom, boom down the stairs with some big guy on top of him. So then he says things that are a lot worse than screw you. We're still friends to this day, so I didn't take it too personally. Point is, even on a jiu-jitsu mat, even in a gym, it's still a three-dimensional space. There's still movement possible. How does this apply in self-defense? Well, let me give you an example. Years ago, I've told this story before, but years ago, about an hour after I got my jiu-jitsu black belt, New Year's Eve, 2006, I'm coming home, and I notice that there's a commotion going on in front of my home. There's a couple of homeless thieves who've stolen some stereo equipment and some women's purses, and they're going through it in the bushes out front of the condo complex where I then lived. My neighbors had called the cops, so the cops were on their way, but they were delayed. And I'm like, okay, I don't need to do much here. I'm just going to wait here till the cops get here and take care of these guys. Trouble is, it was New Year's Eve, cops were busy, took them a long time to arrive. So one guy leaves, goes somewhere else, and like, oh, okay, that wasn't a good idea. Now the second guy's about to leave. I'm like, okay, no, he's not leaving. I'm not really worried. The only possible concern here is that he's got a weapon. I just, there's no real physical confrontation possibility here, except if he's got a weapon. So I'm monitoring the hands. The hands have to stay within sight at all times, or I'm dropping him. But his hands do stay in sight. I'm like, buddy, you're staying here. Well, what do you mean? You're staying here. We've called the cops. And I'm not going to let you leave. So this turns into a verbal escalation. This escalates into a verbal confrontation. And then he runs. He runs all of a sudden, but he's not trying to get away. He's running over to the gas station. That's maybe 50, 60 feet away. And he runs in front of the gas station. He turns around, and now he doubles down. He's throwing everything he can at me to provoke me. He's bringing my mother into this. He's bringing my sexual orientation into this. He's bringing the sexual orientation of my mother into this. He's trying to get me to punch him. And fortunately, I had just enough self-control to realize, no, the reason the guy ran from the alley out into the public space by the gas station is now there are witnesses and now there are cameras. And if I drop this guy, the only thing the cops are going to see is me going from a verbal confrontation to a physical confrontation, punching him in the head, possibly, quite likely, injuring him. And I'm like, fortunately, I had enough self-restraint to not engage. But he was moving the location of the fight to be of advantage to him. It was actually very clever. I'm sure it's not the first time that he did it. Eventually, I didn't bite, managed to keep him there. The cops arrived and they dealt with it. So it all ended well. This isn't unique to self-defense. It's not unique to jiu-jitsu. You see MMA fighters doing this all the time. Khabib has done it. It was done recently in the UFC last year. But basically, if we're over in your corner, with your corner giving you advice, and you've got me in your guard, if I can pick you up, or if I picked you up in a takedown, I'd rather be by my corner, where you can't hear advice, but I can. Pick you up, carry you over here to the other corner, and then slam you. It's been done a number of times. Like I said, Khabib's done it, and I'll post a video to the other fighter who did it most recently. But it's nothing new. This has been done a lot, and it's done all the time in judo. They really have to play the edge, or they have to be very, very aware of the edge of the mat. And it's done in jiu-jitsu as well. I was talking about this with Dan Lukart when he was on my podcast, episode 313, at about the 48-minute mark. He was talking about how, it's funny, he set me up. We were talking about defending the back when your opponent's got one hook in. And I was trying to come up with a technical answer of what I'd like to do, which was in the gi, come up under the armpit, grab the shoulder, pike up, put weight onto his shoulder, pin, and then gradually work my way back to facing him. And he was like, no. That's much too complicated. That's much too technical. If you're just going to keep on rolling, and if you roll off the edge of the mat, then you're going to get stood up. And you're going to get stood up in the center of the mat, and you've escaped that position.
You know that this is going to happen. Like, you've seen it a billion times. Oh, the guy's going to get out of bounds. It's not that easy to get out of bounds sometimes, though, because you can't do it on purpose. But you know the guy's going to try and get out of bounds, because if he just rolls crazy enough, we go out of bounds here, referee's paro, and you stand up.
So that's another example of how spatial awareness is important. And if you've ever done any self-defense training, where even if you're just grappling, and the coach or somebody throws weapons down over the floor, and then all of a sudden you got to get from over here and be the first person to get over here to get a hold of the weapon. It's another example of how you move in 2D and 3D space to improve your position. So, long story short, regardless of whether you're doing this for sport, for MMA, for fighting, or for self-defense, you have to be aware that just because you're having a confrontation with a guy here doesn't mean that you need to stay here. It may be entirely to your advantage to run 50 feet where there's more people to witness, where you're yelling, "Don't hit me, please don't hit me, please stop fighting," as you're fighting the guy. Now you got witnesses saying that you were trying to de-escalate the fight, and hopefully you were. It may be entirely to your advantage to move the fight to places where you've got friends and he doesn't, where you've got access to weapons and he doesn't. There may be other tactical advantages. It may be entirely to your advantage to move it onto, from soft ground onto hard ground, from hard ground onto soft ground, depending on what position you're in, depending on what your preferences are. A lot of people get set up into, I'm in a fight right here, must stay here. It's a form of tunnel vision. And regardless of whether you're, what kind of problem you're trying to deal with in life, tunnel vision is usually a bad thing. You want to keep at least 10% of your mental capacity open to other solutions, to not just being stuck in that one position, and other ways to skin the cat. Don't stay in one place. Keep moving, keep moving, keep moving.